Hello and welcome to the Neurodivergent Fitness Podcast. We are starting a new series, and I am one of your hosts, Meaghan. I am a personal trainer, a dancer, and I love octopuses.
And my name is Ryan Sullivan. I am a personal trainer. I am a biomechanical specialist, the creator of the human movement method, and I have also been a chef and a martial artist in my lifetime of careers.
And you love food. Okay.
And I do love food.
So today we're going to talk about common issues that go on with the body and what we see when we're working with clients that can prevent them from doing other exercises and prevent them from doing specific body movements that would be really helpful for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've noticed a lot. Have you ever had the experience, either in your own training or when you work with clients, where people say, "Oh, that's uncomfortable when I do that, so I'm just not going to do that movement." The tendency, I think, for a lot of personal trainers and fitness professionals and fitness enthusiasts is to work around issues instead of working through them.
Or they will do the opposite and just completely stop working altogether.
That's
Like,
also true.
I have an injury, my shoulder's messed up, therefore I can't really do anything. I'm just going to do nothing but walking instead.
Right. Well, and what you notice is that it ultimately ends in the same result, which is the person doing less and less and less dynamic movements until they're down to walking for fitness. And then even that can become problematic at a point.
Especially if you're not addressing some of the root causes of why the injury is even happening. Because there could be a situation where there's an injury that happens in your shoulder, but if you're walking for a long time and that's your only form of fitness, that shoulder injury is going to play a role in even walking, to your point.
Absolutely. I think it affects other parts of life too. I think it affects, I've definitely worked with clients who have come to me. I can think of one client that I'm working with right now in particular that was like, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. Or I've always been a fill in the blank. I've always been a runner, and I'm worried that I may need a knee replacement, and I, want to get into the kind of shape that I need to be in so that I can do what I love and I don't need to go through that surgery if it's not necessary. That's another client that I'm working with right now. So you definitely see these people come in and they have a desire for health and wellness and longevity. But unfortunately, the way the general paradigm works is you're either training or you're in PT. And there's like very little middle ground for a lot of people.
100%. And I also had a client before that who just wanted to be able to walk her son down the aisle without limping and without being in
Hmm.
pain. And that sounds like a simple thing, but for her, she had bone on bone arthritis, and her PT told her to do squats. So here we are. And as if no one heard Ryan, he was grumbling from the background.
Can you
uh,
hear my teeth grinding?
I can. So yeah, and then a lot of times the options that are commonly given to people are surgery
Hmm.
or to do movements that might actually be making the situation worse.
Well, and let's put it this way. I think most people are operating from a place of good intent. And what happens is there's a breakdown in information. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're either talking, like, let's say we're talking to family members. This will be better.
Okay.
But it also happens with clients. But let's say you're, talking with family members. I definitely have acted as a medical advocate for family members before. And I'll be like, well, what did the doctor tell you? And they say, oh, it's fine. Okay, I know that's not what the doctor said. Like, so a lot of the time there's a breakdown in general communication, and what's said and how it's received don't always match. And so I think as a personal trainer and as a fitness professional, one of the ways that I got into this working with the biomechanics of things is because I've kind of always been of the mindset that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we can help clients not have these things turn into catastrophic problems, and if we can bulletproof them for the most common problems that people encounter in life so that they can live a long, happy, healthy life, then one, we're going to have higher retention of clientele. Two, we're going to see better results in the long run, maybe not in the short run. And three, when problems do occur, we already have a plan in place that we can call on to help that person get through their issue and get back to regular training without losing any ground.
100%. I had a situation with my mom actually the other day who came to one of my restorative strength classes, and she's like, I have something going on with my shoulder. I was like, oh, tell me about it. And she's like, no, it's like a thing. I probably just need to like go to the doctor. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Yeah. And she was able to like tell me what's going on. It was all like overhead movement. She told me where the source of the pain was. I was like, okay, actually, let's just try a couple things. Okay. I gave her a couple spots to release. We ended up working on shoulders for the remaining of the class because other people had shoulder situations going on. So we released, we mobilized, and we strengthened. And by the end of class, my mom's like, oh, it actually feels better. And I think that sometimes we take these injuries and then even like in our heads, we blow them out of proportion in terms of like what we need to do to solve it. And if we actually knew how like the body worked and we knew some of these protocols, the situation is actually not as big of a deal as we might think it is.
It's really not. And not only that, but so one of the things that's kind of crazy is like, well, it's just injured. This is my favorite. Okay. After a decade of being a professional martial artist, I can tell you, I could point to most places on my body and say, it's just injured. Like, it's not, if you punch and kick and throw and fall and do this for a living, there's almost no joint in your body that doesn't have something going on. And most people have something past a certain age that would fall in the realm of being chronic. And what I mean by chronic is that it may come and go, but you do feel it at some point every single day. That is the definition of chronic. It may not mean every second of every day, but it is something that does chronically happen. And past a certain age, I used to have a client, he was a retired physical therapist, and one of his favorite sayings was, all of God's children past the age of 30 have arthritis. He used to say that all the time. And it's because people think that arthritis is a death sentence, and in reality, it's actually not. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon in the body that happens to help stabilize joints. So if you're developing arthritis in an area, that's a pretty good, as long as it's a certain type of arthritis, that's a pretty good sign that what you actually need is better joint control and stability, not to avoid movement in that area.
100%. Funny enough, I just got diagnosed with some arthritis. Oh, wow, past 30.
Are you past 30?
Yeah, it's the arthritis of the cartilage that connects your rib bones to this part that I forgot the name of.
Your sternum.
Sternum. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's fun. Yay.
It's a really interesting place to develop arthritis.
It is. I started talking to some of my dance friends, and they also have it.
Oh, so you guys must do a lot of chest popping.
We do.
Yep.
We do. Oh, and then they prescribed me physical therapy, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what comes of that. Yeah. Well, what were you just talking about that I was going to comment on?
No, we were just saying that like arthritis does happen. And it is a sign. Historically, people think that it's a sign of overuse. And it's not overuse, it's disuse. And so it's one of those things that we're coming to understand now, that so many of these chronic conditions that we look at that are anything that ends in the word itis. Just if it's an itis, it means inflammation. So if it's an itis, it means something's not working right, and therefore there is inflammation. And we do know that inflammation and, for example, other chronic issues like autoimmune issues and arthritis and things like that and inflammation play a hand in hand together. So if one of the things I always tell clients is shearing force
Yeah.
is the enemy of joints. So I've got a joint here. It goes like that really, really well. I promise you, if I push on it this way, causing shearing force, that's the enemy of that joint. That's not going to end well. And so if I'm not using, so let's say I have a hinge joint like this one here, and I'm not using it properly, and so it's taking on some kind of shearing force, like if my knee wobbles side to side, that creates shearing force. My body's natural tendency is going to be to start to produce arthritis in that region to stabilize that knee. So if we could, long before that happens, look at how a person walks, or look at how a person stands, or look at how a person does complex movements and say, hey, I've noticed that you've got some knee instability. And instead of just looking at the knee, but then looking at the hip and the foot and how they interact with the knee, and start to isolate those joints, bring them back online, and then start to integrate it into whole body work that's more aligned with what I would refer to as evolutionary movements. What you're going to find is that the body actually has a restorative capacity. It can heal itself.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up knees, because something that comes up a lot in the dance community is, I have bad knees, or I have old knees, or I have just knees that don't work. And the reality is that when you take your knees and do exactly what you are saying, there's a very popular dance move where your knees literally come inward and come out. And you see it a lot in like choreography, you see it a lot in videos. That's literally the opposite, not opposite, but it is definitely not the joint, the way the joint was intended. It can do that, it rotates, it comes from a different joint, but the knee itself, right?
And I know the movement you're talking about. I promise you, the people that don't have major knee issues and do that movement on a regular basis most likely have really, really strong position and awareness of the ball of their foot. They have very healthy and strong ankles, and they're very good at rotational control of the hip. If you can do all three of those things, there won't be shearing force. Well, there will be minimal shearing force in the knee.
Yeah.
But if you're just imitating the movement and your ankles are loosey-goosey and you have poor rotation in your hip, your knee's going to take a ton of it. So
100%. Yeah. And a lot of times whenever people bring up knee pain, I always ask them, I'm like, do we have anything going on with the hip? Do we have anything going on with the ankles? Because a lot of knee pain is not knee pain as much as it is the other joints that are then putting more force, like you're talking about, on that knee.
Well, and to your point, it's actually funny because most people say, well, my ankle. And I'm like, okay. And you've heard me say this because we've known each other a while. One of the things I tell all my clients, everything below your elbow is hand, everything below your knee is foot. Like the way I divide the human body mentally in my own methodology is not the anatomical standard. I really believe that everything below the knee is foot, because just like with my hand, these muscles control these fingers. Believe it or not, your primary big toe flexor runs up the back of your calf. So the muscle that controls 60% of your balance through your big toe, which also helps support your arch, is not necessarily directly involved in, but helps support the arch, isn't even in your foot. It runs up the back of your calf. So if my ankle is supported by my big toe and my arch, and those muscles aren't even locally stabilizing, they're further up the chain, I can't think of my ankle as something separate from my toes or even separate from all the way up to my knee. my ankle is held together by a very complex system of tension. And it's a remarkable system.
Yep, and this is why rolling out the bottom of your feet is incorporated into so many different protocols.
Mm-hmm. This is also why in the system that we both use and that I use is I now have a lot of the training done on the midfoot, which I know just goes against all weight training. Oh my God, you can't do that. Your heels have to be on the ground, which is hilarious because you go watch a tennis player play tennis. Go watch a dancer dance. Go watch, ask Bruce Lee if you should be on your heels or on the balls of your feet. You can't ask him, but he did a lot of writing on it. And the reality is that midfoot stance is an athletic stance. Yeah. Where if the goal is to move as much weight as possible to produce the biggest muscles possible, yeah, put your heels down. But if the goal is to find the most efficient, effective, and balanced movement that you can distribute through all of the joints of your body with the best tensillary integrity, aka structural integrity, that comes from what I would say is well-coordinated musculature, you're going to see people land on their heel and then pivot off the ball of their foot. That's what you're going to see. But if they want to be light on their feet, their heels are not going to be down. No.
And it's interesting. So for all the dancers, I'm thinking about two different styles that emphasize exactly what you're saying. So the style I mainly do is crump, and that is mostly full foot on the ground because it is based in power and explosive power from the ground. And you need a lot of just stability to stay and to get that power. Here, I think about house dance, which is a very flowy movement, and you're constantly on your feet, and you're using a lot of footwork, and you want to be able to move through, and you're constantly going like this, back and forth. You're on the ball of your foot. You have to be on the ball of your foot. The minute you put your heel down, you lose your flow, your grip, and your control.
And so, well, anytime your heel's down because you're looking for power, you shouldn't be on your heel. You should be neutrally still in the midfoot, so that if this is my heel, this is the outer, this is where the pinky toe is, and this is where the big toe is, I want to have the center of my gravity here so that I can access any one of those points as needed, understanding that flat-footedness is not a static position, meaning you don't stay like that. You roll through the foot, understanding that you can transfer from one of these 3 points, but that you are not, you're not married to any of them. And no, you're not. And the human movement method is based in evolutionary biomechanics, meaning we're looking at how did humans evolve? What are they best suited to do? And then how do we, exercise our body in a way that is most conducive to longevity, because we're essentially following the user manual. We're doing what the body is built to do. There's what the body can do, and then there's what the body evolved to do. And the thing is that we weren't really meant to walk around in big, thick sneakers all the time. And we certainly weren't meant to do it on concrete, hard, flat ground. So in that way, already a lot of these pathologies start in the feet. And I'm not like, I don't necessarily believe that like you need to sit around and like flex every one of your toes or anything like that. But I think there are a lot of people that can benefit from lower leg strengthening and mobility in ways that they don't even realize affect not just their hips, but their lower back and even their head posture, because it starts in how the feet orient themselves.
100%. And I think about, so in terms of how all the systems of your body work and what's incorporated when you're talking about some of these very small nuances that seem like to your point, they seem like they're not as important as they might be. So you have these very small muscles, right? And then you have the larger muscles, right? And so I'm trying to get at like the different tonic and phasic systems that play a role in like whether you're able to like control that or not control that, right? Because
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you say tonic and phasic systems, our phasic systems are the ones we control.
Right.
Our tonic systems, we don't really control those. We can influence their length and their tonality by the types of exercise that we do and how we hold ourselves posturally, and even, believe it or not, the energy, emotions that we bring to a situation. But they're like blinking and breathing. You can control them in a way, but 99.9% of your life, you don't even think about them.
Right. Can you explain what exactly those are?
Yeah, so your tonic systems are built in, so they start to develop when you're in utero. So the simplest way of thinking about this is they are the muscles that literally hold you in the fetal position, and they're the little muscles deep inside of our body that develop rotation. And like, for example, you have a whole crazy muscle structure around your spine that you have no conscious awareness of. And it is remarkably sophisticated. That's a tonic system. Like, other examples of tonic systems would be like the muscles that control the arch of your foot, or really common ones, your inner thighs, your hip flexors, your diaphragm is a muscle, your neck flexors, the small rotators in your shoulder. Can you consciously learn to control them? Yes. Do you think about them often? No. And so think about all the muscles that you use to curl yourself up in the fetal position. Those are essentially, for lack of a better explanation, your tonic systems. They develop when you're in utero, they develop in a zero-G environment, and you develop them very early in life, so your neurological connection to them is super high. The amount and the number of the number of nerve endings in those muscles way outweighs the number of nerve endings in your phasic muscles. So the way to understand this is they feed more information into the overall motor cortex and system than the big phasic muscles do. So the phasic muscles are the ones that we develop when we're babies. Yeah.
I asked you a question about tonic.
Yeah.
Can you explain how when you're in fight or flight mode, how that tonic system reacts?
Yes. So, okay. So when you're in fight or flight mode, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, they naturally tighten. And they do this. This is based on research that's from a book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. I can't pronounce the author's last name off the top of my head right now. But he's amazing. He's great to listen to. Look it up. Watch his stuff. It's great. Anyway, but what happens is in almost all of nature, when animals encounter extremely stressful situations, I'm a zebra, I'm walking along, a lion jumps out, those muscles tighten up into this hyperelastic state to flight. That's going to be the first thing that you want to do if you're an animal of prey, is you're going to try to take off. So think about, for example, your hip flexors. Those are going to be the muscles that kick your legs up so that you can drive your big muscles out, so that you can start to run. Well, in humans, it's the same thing. We get into a crouched mode. We crouch down into this almost semi-fetal mode. When you look at a human enter a combat stance, they're going to be in an essentially crouched semi-fetal position because they're protecting their organs, and they're also in a position where they are ready to spring in any direction. That is what we do, is we want to curl up in this fetal position because those muscles, when we're in that state, those muscles are wired into the fight, flight, freeze, fawn system. And this is where it makes sense if I have to deal with a tiger or another violent human being or something like that. Where it doesn't make sense is if I'm going click, 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 and I'm already in that semi-fetal position and I'm typing on a computer and those muscles, and I'm stressed, emotionally stressed for a long period of time. If a lion jumped out and attacked me and I fought it off and I got away and I ran like hell, and I was in nature and I was not in society and I didn't have a boss to report to and I didn't have emails I needed to fill out, I would catch my breath. I would probably sit there and shake and cry, and then I would probably get up and shake it off and move on with my life. Mm-hmm. But if I live in a society where I can't do any of those things, and I always need to be emotionally regulated and I always need to be in the right place at the right time, we're constantly suppressing those natural feelings. And so what happens is it starts to offload in those muscles, and we get tighter and smaller and smaller. And that's when you start to see people have these kind of elongated, and it's because the core is contracting inward from this chronic stress that people are in. And it's an emotional stress. It's not real stress. If you were a zebra, you would lay down, you would convulse, you would stand up, and you'd go on with your life, and you wouldn't have heart attacks, you wouldn't have ulcers, you wouldn't have anxiety attacks, you wouldn't have these things. You see those things in society because we have to repress a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. And then, do you think that the process of, like, let's say being on a computer for most of the day where you are physically in that position of curling up a little bit, does that feed information to your nervous system indicating that you are in? No?
100%. Oh, sorry. No, okay. That's absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And they, they've done research on this posture power stuff and everything. And okay, so I'm going to get slightly dark and macabre here.
Here we go.
So if you look at a common system used at Guantanamo Bay, which is enhanced interrogation, they use stress positions. And one of the stress positions that's super common is to handcuff somebody behind the front legs of a chair. So you handcuff their hands either behind their knees or behind the front legs of a chair, and you just leave them there. And you leave them there for hours. And it's excruciating. You can't breathe. It's terrible. Well, we do that all the time to ourselves. In fact, during COVID, when I was working with clients online, it was crazy. Everybody was having horrible anterior hip pain. And it was because most people didn't realize it, but they were basically sitting at home in non-ergonomic working conditions. They were binge watching TV, and they were super stressed. And so they didn't realize it, but they were kind of spending all their time in a fetal position. And so one of the number one things that we learn about chronic muscular dysfunction is that it is associated with PTSD. It is associated with what's called a high ACE score. It is associated with certain neurological conditions that we refer to as learning disabilities or neurodivergence. And so there's an interesting chicken or egg problem here in that if I get better control over my body, there is research that shows I also get better control over my, for example, ADHD symptoms. And so if you're in a really stressful situation, a traumatic situation, and you don't move, it can actually make the situation worse. It's about finding that, I don't know what the right word is, but it's about finding the ability to feel like you have some sort of control and power over the situation. And there's, again, tons of research done on this. But the point is, this also goes back to chronic pain. If you just live in chronic pain and there's nothing that you can do, or if you're just injured and there's nothing that you can do, or if you have a stressful job and you don't exercise and there's nothing that you can do, what if somebody comes to you and says, no, believe it or not, there are things that it's not something I'm going to do for you. It's not a shot. It's not surgery. It's not more trauma. It's not taking away your empowerment or your agency. It's actually enhancing it, it's growing it, it's making it bigger. What if we can do that for you?
Yeah.
And there's a vehicle to do that. What if that's possible?
Yeah, what if that's possible? And what if the cycle that you're in where you feel like you can't do anything makes you not do anything, so then you feel like you can't do anything, then becomes, I can do something, therefore I feel better, and therefore I feel better, therefore I feel like I can do more. And that becomes a much more positive cycle than I can't do anything and I have no agency.
And
which is...
go ahead. In human movement method, I refer to this as the loci of movement, which is based off the loci of control, right? So loci of movement, when your loci of movement shrinks and shrinks and shrinks to where you can't even sit comfortably, how miserable are you? Right?
Very.
And that's where we're in like this debilitated chronic pain zone. And so then what if moving a little bit and a little bit and a little bit brings that loci of movement back? Maybe you have this idea of, well, when I was 12 and I could do whatever and yada yada, but you don't go backward, you go forward. But you can increase that sphere from no matter where you are.
100%. And I think part of that is accepting that when you do get an injury, when you do have something like a chronic illness, or you have something that has changed in your body, such as you can't eat X, Y, and Z, that instead of trying to go back to that place, that 12-year-old place, there are ways that you can incorporate that into your lifestyle and into your workout plan that will look different, it will feel different, but you're still making progress. It just might not look how you thought it was going to look.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I think a lot of the time the common standard fitness advice doesn't work well for people that are having those chronic issues.
Yes.
But because of the way that our society is structured, it's like, well, you're just not trying hard enough. And the thing is that the answers are not as accessible. And I think we all know that we have healthcare issues in this country. We have we have just general health issues in this country. Yep. We have access issues in this country.
Very large access issues.
Yeah. And they don't seem to be going down. So we need an alternative. And the alternative can be brought in and met by, because we're not doctors, we're not physical therapists, we don't diagnose things. So the human movement method lens isn't one of diagnosing anything. It's one of being able to plainly look at a person and go, oh, that shouldn't be moving like that. Let's go ahead and do some release, let's do some mobilization, and let's do some strengthening and reintegrating to get that working better so that we can increase that loci of movement. We can make you capable of more dynamic movement. And that doesn't mean doing things harder. It means doing things better.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap up this episode, everything Ryan just said is what we're going to talk about in the next episode. We're going to go through the human movement method, talk a little bit more in depth about what that really looks like and what that involves in order to keep that loci expanding instead of making it small and just walking, which there's nothing wrong with walking.
Walking is, let me be very clear, walking is one of the best possible exercises for lifelong. Walking and swimming are like right up there with I joke that as I age, I will get closer and closer to water. So like when I'm 80 and I'm just like walking and like dog paddling in a pool, you guys can come and find me. I'll be in the shallow end. Yeah.
I'll be in the water aerobics class, doing all the fun exercises, and hopefully there's dances in there too. The water's
most likely.
That will be me.
So,
okay. Anyway.
All right.
Thank you.
So we'll see you next time.